Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, the podcast that takes, those really dense academic papers and makes them surprisingly interesting. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita.
We've noticed a lot of you are tuning in, which is amazing, but I haven't quite hit that subscribe button yet.
Yeah, and that little button, honestly, it's so small, but it makes such a huge difference in helping us reach more people with these important discussions.
Right. Today, we're tackling something that, well, it quietly shapes all our careers. Why it can sometimes be so hard to switch companies.
Yeah, it's like this invisible gravity in the job market, isn't it?
Exactly. These forces keeping talent sort of stuck in orbit.
Yeah.
So we're going to unpack these employee mobility barriers.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they matter? Whether you're, a company trying to keep your stars or just navigating your own career.
That's right. And we've got a great guide for this, a really thorough review from the Journal of Management, 2025. It's called Employee Mobility Barriers, an integrative review across careers, human resources, and strategic management research.
Quite a title.
It is. But what's powerful is that it pulls together research from all these different angles, careers, HR, strategy, to give us a much, much clearer picture than we usually get.
Okay, so why should you, our listener, care about this? Well, getting a handle on these barriers, it's like getting a backstage pass to the modern workplace.
Oh.
It shows how companies compete using people and how that whole game really shapes your career path, your opportunities. So if you're thinking about a move, leading a team, or just curious about, the future of work.
And this is definitely for you.
All right, let's dig in. What exactly are these employee mobility barriers at their core?
Okay, so put simply, it's basically any mechanism, any factor that stops employees moving completely freely between different firms.
And that's a big deal because people aren't like equipment.
Right, exactly. Employees can, in theory, just walk. And whether they do or don't has huge ripple effects on the company's performance, how knowledge spreads, innovation, even entrepreneurship.
And it hits individuals too, doesn't it? We hear a lot about boundaryless careers these days.
Right. Your ability to actually have a boundaryless career depends heavily on these barriers. They can help you or hold you back. And think about big company moves like mergers.
Yeah. Keeping the key people after a merger is critical.
Absolutely make or break. And these barriers are central to whether that happens.
So the review suggests we haven't really looked at the whole picture before. We've studied bits and pieces.
Precisely. People have looked at non-competes, or maybe job satisfaction, but often in isolation. This review tries to capture, and I like their phrase, the totality of forces that constrain people from leaving their current employer.
Not just why people leave, but all the reasons they stay.
Exactly. All those sticking points.
Okay, so this review is bridging gaps. You mentioned different fields, careers, HR, strategy. How do they typically see this? Do they agree?
Well, that's the interesting part. They often have quite different perspectives. Strategic management, for example, is usually focused on the firm's competitive advantage.
So keeping talent is about staying ahead of rivals.
Pretty much. They might even see talent flow as like a zero-sum game. If our star engineer leaves, our competitor gains. So barriers are good for the firm.
Okay, that's the high-level strategic view. What about HR, the human resources folks?
HR tends to be more operational, more day-to-day. They're looking at, how do our policies and practices keep employees happy, productive, aligned with what the company needs?
So finding that sweet spot between control and motivation.
Right. Balancing keeping people, but also making sure they want to be kept, that they're intrinsically motivated.
And then there's careers research. They look at it from the employee side.
Exactly. From a careers perspective, these barriers often look like, barriers. Obstacles to growth, learning new things, getting broader experience, finding better opportunities, freedom, basically.
So there's a built-in tension right there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Companies want to lock down knowledge and skills. Employees often see moving on as essential for their own development.
Okay, so lots of different viewpoints. How does the review organize all this? I think you mentioned a typology.
Yes, they came up with a really useful framework. It uses two main dimensions to categorize all these different barriers.
Okay, what are they?
First is the level it operates at. Is it an individual thing, something organizational at the company level, or even societal, like laws or the economy? And importantly, these levels aren't totally separate. They interact.
Individual, organizational, societal time. Got it. And the second dimension?
The second one is how much control the company actually has over that barrier. Is it something they can directly influence, high control, or something largely outside their hands, low control?
Ah, okay. So some things companies can actively manage, others they just have to react to.
Precisely. And the really neat insight is how companies can kind of play this strategically. They can use or leverage barriers at different levels. Maybe they lobby on visa laws at the societal level,
Right.
or implement specific training at the organizational level, or tailor pay at the individual level. It's about orchestrating these different forces.
Fascinating. It sounds like a real chess game. Let's break down some of these categories. What about barriers at the individual level where the firm supposedly has less control?
Okay, yeah. So down at the individual level, with lower firm control, you've got things just inherent to the person, their attributes, right? Personality, what they value in life, their career dreams.
Like someone who really values work-life balance over climbing the ladder.
Exactly. Or someone who just gets bored easily and likes change versus someone who thrives on stability. The review mentions this concept, central life interest in work, or CLI.
CLI.
Yeah. If work is like core to your identity, you tend to stick around more. If it's just a job, maybe less so. And honestly, some people are just naturally more likely to move on, and a company can't really change that deep down tendency. For you, the listener, this means your own values really matter here.
So companies might even try to hire people they think will stick around longer based on these traits.
Absolutely. People have looked into using biographical data, though that's tricky territory. Another huge one at this level is obviously job satisfaction.
How happy you are in the role.
Right. Your overall contentment, how involved you feel, whether you identify with the company's mission. Now, while this is your feeling, the company can influence it.
Through things like company culture, CSR efforts.
Yeah, exactly. Good culture, feeling like the company does good things, feeling like you fit there, that person-organization fit, that all builds emotional connection. It makes you feel like leaving is leaving a part of your identity behind.
Yeah.
That's a powerful barrier.
Okay, moving up a bit now, where does the company start having more direct influence? That sort of bridge between individual and organizational.
Yeah, that middle ground. A key one here is job design, how the actual work is structured.
Making it interesting, giving people autonomy.
Precisely. Companies can intentionally craft roles to be meaningful, challenging, linked to the bigger picture. Think about ideals, idiosyncratic deals where a job is almost custom built for someone, or just job enrichment generally.
The idea being, if my job is great, why leave?
Exactly. Optimal challenge, feeling integrated socially, it boosts retention. But the review warns, too much pressure, making the job too demanding. That can backfire and push people out.
It's a balance.
Always. And this whole area is getting complicated now with, remote work, gig work. Traditional job design doesn't always map perfectly anymore.
And you can't talk about staying or going without talking money and benefits, right?
Absolutely. Compensation and benefits, but it's not just about the base salary because a competitor can often match that.
So what does make it a barrier?
It's the firm-specific rewards, things you lose if you leave and can't easily replace elsewhere, stock options that haven't vested yet.
The golden handcuffs.
Kind of. Or maybe unique health benefits, or even just the status or prestige of working at that specific company. Things that are valuable to you, but tied to that employer.
So they need to be unique and valuable within the firm.
Yeah, the review stresses they should ideally increase your output and be rare or firm-specific to really act as a strong barrier. So for you, weighing a job offer, you have to look beyond salary to these less transferable perks.
Okay, now let's move fully into the organizational level, where the company really has its hands on the levers. What are some big ones here?
A really significant one is social embeddedness.
Meaning?
Basically, all the connections you build up, ties within the workplace, your team, your boss, colleagues you like.
Leader-member exchange, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But also ties outside work that are linked to work, like being settled in the local community because of the job, family nearby, that sort of thing.
So leaving isn't just leaving a job, it's potentially disrupting your whole social network.
Right. These connections offer emotional support, professional help. It makes moving a much bigger deal. You'd have to rebuild all that. Although, interestingly, the review does note potential dark sides, maybe staying too long just because of ties.
And maybe remote work changes this calculation a bit. Less daily interaction.
It could, yeah. The impact might be shifting there.
Makes sense. People get comfortable. What else at the organizational level keeps people put?
Another crucial area is firm specificity and complementarities. It sounds technical, but it's important.
Break it down for us. Firm-specific human capital, FSHC.
Right. FSHC is knowledge and skills that are really only valuable inside that specific company. Maybe you got trained on their unique internal system, or you work in a team where everyone's skills are highly specialized together.
So the more of this FSHC you have, the less attractive you are to other companies, or the more you lose by leaving.
Essentially, yes. Your value is much higher to your current employer than it would be elsewhere. Complementarities are related. It's about how your skills interact perfectly with the company's unique resources or processes.
Like a key fitting a specific lock.
Good analogy. Your skills create extra value because of the company's setup. Take those skills elsewhere to a company without that specific lock, and they might be worth less. It's about the synergy.
So it's different from social ties. This is more about the actual work and resources.
Exactly. Relational versus resource-based, you could say. Think of a researcher who thrives because of unique lab equipment only their current company has. That's complementarity.
Got it. What else keeps people organizationally tied?
Career development and advancement opportunities inside the firm are huge.
Internal promotions, training programs.
Yep. Clear career ladders, tuition reimbursement for general skills, mentorship programs. If you see a future for yourself within the company, a path for growth, that's a powerful reason to stay invested.
It appeals to your self-interest, right?
Definitely. Even in today's world of boundaryless careers, getting that development sponsored by your current employer still boosts your overall marketability long term.
And then there are the more formal methods, the legal stuff.
Right, legal and contractual barriers. This is where things like non-compete agreements fit in.
The ones that say you can't work for a competitor for X amount of time.
Exactly. Also, intellectual property rights patents, trade secrets. If an inventor leaves, the IP stays with the company, making their knowledge potentially less valuable to a new employer. Union agreements can also play a role here sometimes.
So these are company policies, but grounded in the legal system.
Correct. They are imposed by the firm within that broader legal framework.
Okay, we've done individual, organizational. What about the big picture? The societal level, where companies have less control.
Yeah, at the societal level, you're looking at macro forces. Things way bigger than one company.
Like the overall economy.
Yes, economic conditions, unemployment rates are a big one. If jobs are scarce, people are less likely to jump ship. Also, immigration policies, they affect the talent pool. Portability of professional licenses.
Like doctors or lawyers moving between states or countries.
Exactly. These broad factors shape the whole external labor market landscape. A single firm can't really change them, but they absolutely have to navigate them. If you're thinking internationally, societal barriers like visa rules are huge.
And then you mentioned one category that cuts across levels. Information barriers.
Oh.
That sounds intriguing.
It really is. Information barriers are about the gaps, the unknowns, the uncertainties in the job market for both sides, employees and companies.
How does that stop people moving?
Well, maybe you, as an employee, think your skills are super specific to your current company, but maybe they aren't really. You just lack information about opportunities elsewhere.
So fear of the unknown.
Partly, yes. Or maybe a potential new employer looks great on paper, but you don't really know the culture, the real day-to-day. That uncertainty makes staying put seem safer.
And companies face this too.
Oh yeah. It's hard for them to perfectly judge the skills and potential value of someone from outside. This information friction can actually be used by companies wanting to keep people really. They might subtly reinforce the idea that skills aren't transferable.
Wow. Even things like a company's reputation.
That can be an information barrier too. A well-known, high-status company might seem like a safer bet, even if a smaller, unknown firm might actually be a better fit or offer more growth. Lack of information creates inertia.
This is such a complex web of factors. So given all this, how do companies actually manage these barriers strategically?
The review offers a neat way to think about this, based on those two dimensions. Level of analysis, individual organizational, and degree of firm control, high-low. It gives us 4 strategic modes.
Okay, lay them out for us.
Right. Mode 1, if the firm has high control over barriers at the individual level, they might use proactive, bespoke retention.
Bespoke, meaning tailored.
Exactly. Personalized stuff. Think custom compensation for a star performer, a unique career path designed just for them, often delegated to managers to implement.
Okay, high control, individual focus. What's next?
Mode 2, high control, but at the organizational level. That leads to proactive, generalized retention. These are broader, firm-wide strategies.
Like company-wide stock options.
Yeah.
Or structured career ladders for everyone in a certain division.
Precisely. Centralized HR initiatives, company-wide training programs, things applied more uniformly.
Okay, those are the proactive modes, when the company has more leverage. What if control is low?
Good question. Mode 3, low control at the individual level. This pushes firms towards reactive, bespoke strategies.
Reactive. So responding to things, like making a counteroffer when someone resigns.
Exactly. Counteroffers are a classic example. Or maybe trying to limit knowledge sharing by someone they know is a flight risk. More localized, responsive tactics.
And the last mode, low control organizational level.
That's reactive, generalized strategies. Again, the firm is reacting, but with broader strokes because the barriers are systemic or external.
So maybe changing their outsourcing strategy if they know talent is hard to keep in-house, or focusing more on collaborating with other firms.
Yes, or adjusting HR policies across the board to try and reduce turnover generally, adapting to the reality of the labor market they're in. The key thing is firms probably use a mix of these modes and they shift over time.
That framework really helps clarify those strategic options.
Okay, let's connect this back. How does thinking about mobility barriers in this integrated way change things for those fields we started with: careers, HR, strategy?
Well, for careers research, it really fleshes out ideas like career embeddedness, all the things tying someone to a job. It shows why boundaryless careers might be harder to achieve than they sound because firms are actively building barriers.
Right, the firm's strategy directly impacts individual career possibilities.
Exactly. And seeing the different strategic modes helps understand where in the company retention decisions get made and how that impacts you as an employee. Is it your direct manager making a bespoke deal or a company-wide policy?
Makes sense. What about for the HR folks, HCHRM?
For them, this typology gives a much richer way to think about how retention efforts interact with, say, recruitment. It highlights the need to consider barriers outside their direct control, like those societal ones, and how to react.
And it points to potential conflicts, maybe? Like being too good at retaining people might make it hard to attract new blood. Potentially, yeah. If the place seems too closed off, or the retention method's too restrictive, it could put off external candidates. It's a constant balancing act for HR.
Definitely. And for the big picture, strategic management.
The big takeaway for strategy is that these barriers are fundamental enablers or constraints for almost everything a company does.
Like M&A, R&D, internal collaboration.
All of it. If you can't keep the right people, those strategies might fail. It also forces strategists to be realistic. You can only really deploy barriers you control. If mobility is high due to external factors, you need a different strategy.
And you mentioned that sometimes companies might even want some mobility, the alumni network idea.
Yes, that's a fascinating strategic angle. Sometimes former employees can be incredibly valuable, bringing in clients, returning later with new skills, feeding back market intelligence, reverse knowledge flow.
So a company might strategically choose to lower some barrier.
They might, selectively, or adapt their strategies to foster those beneficial alumni relationships, even if they can't control the outflow itself. It's not always about maximum retention.
Very counterintuitive, but makes sense. Now, the review also emphasizes taking a portfolio perspective. What does that mean? Not looking at barriers in isolation.
Exactly that. Most studies look at, say, non-competes or firm-specific training. But in reality, companies use a mix of barriers. This review argues we need to look at the whole portfolio.
How do they interact? Like, do they reinforce each other?
They might act as complements, yes. Combining two weaker barriers might create a strong effect. Or they could be substitutes, maybe. If you have strong, firm-specific skills, you don't need such strict non-competes.
So understanding the mix is key.
Crucial. Otherwise, you might misunderstand why a particular barrier seems effective or ineffective because you're ignoring its interaction with others. Maybe different barriers are just symptoms of an overall management philosophy.
Looking at the whole system.
Yeah.
Okay, this leads nicely into future research. What are some exciting questions still out there?
Oh, plenty. One big area is digging deeper into those information barriers. The gap between perception and reality, like, do employees think their non-compete is enforceable even if it isn't? How does perceived support affect things?
That perception angle is interesting. What else?
More on the value of alumni networks. How can firms really leverage that relational capital strategically, especially thinking about when they can control barriers versus when they can't?
Right. And compensation?
Yeah. How do mobility barriers affect ideal pay packages? Do barriers mean companies can pay less, like a compensating differential? It ties into bargaining power?
And things change over time, right?
Absolutely. We need more longitudinal studies.
Yeah.
How do these barriers shift across someone's career, or as a company grows, or as industries evolve? It's a dynamic picture.
Wow. This has been incredibly insightful, really unpacking the hidden forces in the job market. So just to quickly recap the key takeaways for you listening.
Yeah, these employee mobility barriers are complex. They operate on multiple levels, individual, company, society, and they really shape things for both firms and individuals.
And understanding them means bringing together these different perspectives from careers, HR, and strategy. You can't just look at it from one angle.
Absolutely. And maybe for you, the listener, take a moment to think about barriers you've seen or experienced yourself. Where do they fit in this framework? What level? How much control did the company have?
Yeah, thinking about the strategies companies use and how that affects career choices, yours or others, can really shift how you see the workplace.
Definitely.
So to leave you with something to chew on, in this world, it seems to be moving towards more flexibility, more gig work, more focus on individual careers. How is this tug of war between company barriers and employee mobility going to play out?
Right. What are the long-term consequences going to be for innovation, for competition, and ultimately for our own career fulfillment?
A lot to think about. And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you're enjoying the show and want to support us in creating more insightful content, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Every contribution helps us continue this journey of exploration and discovery. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.